May I start off by welcoming all of you, everyone here this evening. I count 65 participants already, and some of them are our elders and VIPs. Welcome to the Heritage Schools Nigeria book launch. It's an illustrated history of secondary schools in Nigeria, and perhaps if I read a couple of chapters, or paragraphs rather, from the foreword, it sets the stage very nicely for what we're going to be doing this evening. This is a delightful piece of Nigeria's social history, reminding us of the foundations on which secondary school education was built in Nigeria. The 21 secondary schools presented in this volume have served since then as the models on which subsequent schools were fashioned. For that reason alone, all existing schools should be interested in what constitutes their genealogy and draw fresh inspiration from the vision of their forebears, as well as learning from the ways in which they sought to give effect to that vision. These heritage schools were founded between the second half of the 19th century, starting with CMS Grammar School, Lagos in 1859, and the first half of the 20th century, ending with Holy Child College in 1945. Not unexpectedly, all but 4 of these 21 schools were boys' schools, but they all share the commonalities of aiming at developing the whole person. Moreover, some of the schools started as mixed schools before being separated out on a gender basis. This book launch is to tell you all about these wonderful schools and the effort that Mrs. Oyinkan Ade-Ajayi has made in putting this book together. We think it's a wonderful book that you'll enjoy, and this evening we'd like to share with you and with some of those who are joining us stories about those schools. We have a VIP joining us. He shall remain nameless for just a second while I welcome, hopefully online, Ms. Arunma Oteh, Ms. Aramide Abe, Dr. Christopher Kolade, welcome, Your Excellency, and Mr. Sonny Iroche, as well as His Royal Highness Sanusi Lamido Sanusi and Pastor Ituah Ighodalo. Mrs. Folasade Adefisayo, Mrs. Funsho Adegbola are also going to be saying a few words. It'll be obvious a little later why we picked those particular individuals for this first online launch. However, to start us properly this evening, we should do what all secondary school students learned to do from almost the first day in school. Every school assembly all over the country and maybe all over the world, all the students sing their national anthem. This evening, we have Mrs. Kaline Njoku, who is going to sing our national anthem for all of you. Kaline Njoku.
voice and unity.
Thank you, Karine, for that wonderful rendition of the national anthem. And as I said, we had a very good reason for wanting to play the national anthem, not just because it was a very important part of school life for all of us who went to secondary school, but also because we're very privileged to have this evening the Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, His Excellency Professor Yemi Osinbajo, SAN, GCON, who very kindly agreed to send a few words to us this evening. Professor Yemi Osinbajo.
The Pro-Chancellor and Chairman of the Governing Council of the Pan-Atlantic University, Dr. Christopher Kolade, the Lagos State Commissioner for Education, Mrs. Folasade Adefisayo, His Royal Highness Sanusi Lamido Sanusi, Ms. Arunma Oteh, the Senior Pastor of Trinity House, Pastor Ituah Ighodalo, our host and author, Mrs. Oyinkan Ade-Ajayi, my brother and the silent host, Dr. Yemi Ade-Ajayi, honored guests, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. I was excited to receive and read a copy of Oyinkan Ade-Ajayi's Heritage Schools. It really is a sort of historical document that you know deserves to have been written and should have been written, perhaps long ago, by someone. I'm happy that she authored it, because it really ought to be authored by someone who, by virtue of their own education, fully understands all that is packed into the sort of secondary school education that these great schools offered. So not surprisingly, her style and entire presentation come with an underlying understanding of why the subject is so important as a social phenomenon, while at the same time, it is of such incredible sentimental value to the thousands of old boys and girls of the schools, and is also instructional for up-and-coming generations. There is today a whole slew of research showing the impact that the high school has on who we become and how we turn out in the future. The great traditions of the schools included in this book bear this out. But perhaps the most profound convergence in the educational experience at these colleges is the laser focus on character, moral and ethical behavior, hard work, diligence, trustworthiness, self-denial, honesty, truth, fairness. And I must say that even in today's severely compromised moral environment, I've come across and worked with many from these schools who have demonstrated the strength of character that a well-established moral compass brings. But this matter of character in nation building is not a light matter. Indeed, it is foundational. No developed nation has managed to skip this point and succeed. There must, as a rule, be a prevailing moral standard. Corruption or deviance must be the exception, not the rule. Oyinkan has recorded a unique achievement with this book, a credible historical document, an incredibly profound sentimental journey, and a sound restatement of the role of the high school in shaping character and building enduring values. Happily, it's also immensely readable, and the photographs help the narrative tremendously. It's a book that we must all have, a book we must all read. Congratulations, Oyinkan. Well done.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for those inspiring words. And just to let you all know that this evening isn't an educational seminar or an evening to discuss the rights or wrongs of education or progress. It's really to take a sentimental journey and look at the history of the foundation of our country and our society. I'd like to welcome this evening, and I think they're online, Professor Mrs. Bolanle Awe, Chief Mrs. Folake Shulanke SAN, who I've already seen, Professor Ayobanjo, Professor Mrs. Onyade Elebute, Alhaji Ahmed Joda, Professor Ogunlesi, Ambassador Atta, Chief Philip Asiodu, and Alhaji Bashir Tuku, who have also already seen online. And why? These are our elders. They were the people who went to some of these schools. Admittedly, when you look at Mrs. Folake Sholanke, you know she didn't go to a school that was, she wasn't there 100 years ago. It looks as if she was only there 40 years ago. But nonetheless, we thank you very much for joining us this evening. And it's time for us also to hear from the author herself, what her motivations were, how did she come about deciding to write a history of these heritage schools. In her own words herself, Mrs. Oyinkan Ade-Ajayi.
Good evening, and a huge thank you to everyone for taking time to join us. It is by God's grace that we are alive and well and able to hold this launch event. My most sincere thanks to His Excellency, the Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, for his heartwarming message of congratulations. As someone who is himself a product of one of the finest heritage schools in the country, he has always been a passionate advocate of excellence in education. My gratitude also to the elders who are joining us this evening, in particular my parents, Chief Olu and Mrs. Janet Akinkugbe, and Chief Mrs. Christy Ade-Ajayi. There are also those sadly missed but fondly remembered, including Professor Ladipo Akinkugbe, my uncle and godfather, who was a great motivator and did whatever he could to ensure this project came to fruition. I would like to dedicate the launch today to him. Someone recently asked me how long this project took. My answer? Some of these sweet, innocent-looking children are now approaching university. It took me much longer than I ever anticipated, but it has been a labor of love and hopefully the start of a renewed collective focus on Nigeria's great schools. I won't take up too much of your time, but I'd like to share a little bit about the inspiration for this project, the process of putting it together, and some of the things I learned along the way. The idea for the book was born out of the endless stories my parents and other family members told about their school days. I'd heard of teachers like Pa Eshibi even before I met my husband and his father, who attended a heritage school made up of noble Nigerians. That's Igbobi College, of course. You would have heard of this formidable master who taught boys and their fathers before them, having been a towering figure in the school for 39 years. From talking to alumni of these schools, I noticed the education they received was a source of great inspiration. But more than that, I saw the pride they had in their schools and the way those ties encouraged them to be their best. The famous GCI school class of 46, for example, still meet regularly to reminisce about their school days over 60 years on. And here we see bottom left, Professor Wole Soyinka as a 11, 12-year-old at Government College Ibadan, one of the class of 46. Years ago, I started looking for photographs of those days. This one of Canon Adeyemi in his academic gown is one of my favorite. He was a classics scholar, trained at St. Andrews and Foro Bay College after he became principal of Ondo Boys High School. He introduced Latin and Greek into the curriculum. So I wondered how he would have thought about teaching young boys in a village Greek and Latin, and what vision he would have had for them for them and for their lives. For him to be wearing an academic gown and for the children to see that shows us what importance he placed on education and also changing these children's lives. I'm sure you all have your own memorable teachers who you looked up to and who made an impact on your life. With these early examples, I set myself a task of finding out about the founding of these schools. I'm not a historian, but I enjoyed reading about our history. One of the books I read was Christian Missions in Nigeria, written by my father-in-law, Professor J.F. Ade-Ajayi, who is, of course, one of the best African historians. I started trying to locate the original records and made use of the fantastic resources at the University of Cambridge, Oxford, and Birmingham, which hold archives of the Church Missionary Society. You'd have to specially order the items and then you'd be given gloves, special weights, so you didn't damage the spines. I came across diaries, letters, photographs, and all manner of interesting records. From a diary entry, I learned that one institution, which is in the book, and you have to see that for yourself, was called the School of Sorrows for a period, as one after another of the expatriate staff succumbed to malaria or black water fever. I was so excited when I found this photograph of the foundation students. That would have been taken sometime soon after 1859. It was more difficult to find records and photographs for the government and Catholic colleges. I relied heavily on personal records, like those from Professor Kelsey Harrison and Professor and Mrs. Oyinkan Ade-Ajayi, who generously shared their photographs of Queen's College, Lagos, for Mrs. Elebute, and of course, CMS Grammar School for Professor Elebute. Research done, and I had mountains of material that needed to be woven together into a story that would not only educate, but also inspire and bring joy to the reader. This is one of my favorite, St. Gregory's College. In addition to the historical narrative and archival photographs, I wanted to show what the schools are like now. I was fortunate enough to work with Angus Thompson, a photographer who took photos of the schools and children exactly as they were on the day we visited. They weren't specially prepared for the photographs. One of my favorites is this one with the prefect or head boy talking to the younger boys. And I just love the way that they're all looking with rapt attention, as if he's some kind of demigod. Of course, the final selection of schools was a huge challenge. We started with CMS Grammar School, founded in 1859, and ended with Holy Child College in 1945. I must apologize to those schools not profiled. We know that there are many more than 21 schools that deserve to have been included. We are already working on volume 2. So what is my hope going forward? A couple of things. Records proved very difficult to find, so many schools simply didn't have them, or they were in such poor condition. And I fear that in the next decade, very few of these would remain. So my hope is that the work of preserving our school's heritage will be taken ever more seriously. These schools are still a vital part of Nigeria's current secondary school landscape. We must not allow them to fade away. In a moment, we're going to be hearing from some of the alumni. My sincere thanks to the speakers for taking time from their busy schedules to share their reminiscences, hopes, and dreams. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Oyinka. And it's wonderful to have so many people online watching this launch. It gives me a great deal of pleasure to welcome one of the more eminent Nigerians we have online today, Miss Arunma Oteh, Officer of the Order of the Niger. She really doesn't need introduction to most Nigerians. She's an extremely intellectual and accomplished lady who we're fortunate to have had as the Director General of the Security and Exchange Commission for some time in Nigeria. But she has spent time as being the Treasurer and Vice President of the World Bank. She was in Harvard Business School to do a master's in business administration. She has so many accomplishments to her name. It's very difficult to decide which ones to bring to your attention today. But currently, she's left the World Bank to join St. Anthony's College in Oxford as an academic scholar and executive in residence at Said Business School. She actually has been recognized in 2020 Power List of the most influential people in the UK of African Caribbean heritage. And we're very proud, of course, that she is one of us, having started out at St. Louis Primary School, Kano in 1975, a Catholic school with 2 older sisters, a younger brother, a father who was an engineer, and a mother who was a nurse. Her father then decided that she had to go to Federal Government Girls College, Owerri. And from 1975 to 1980, that's where she ended up. So maybe, Arunma, should we start there? How come you went to Owerri? And also, how did you find it?
First, Yinka, I want to just say that I'm really honored, deeply honored to have been invited to join this phenomenal event. I'm so emotional about it because I often cry about where our country is in terms of educational outcomes, and what Oyinkan has done allows us to think about what is possible. We didn't have as much wealth. People sacrificed to build these heritage schools. And I think we need to look back, and that's why what Oyinkan has done is absolutely phenomenal, to think about how we can build our nation forward and realize the potential of our nation. So I just want to thank you, the Akinkugbe's. I think it runs in the blood because your dad is, of course, an icon of education, your grandfather. And I think when Oyinkan was making a choice of who to marry, she's like, okay, I want to stick with a family that focuses and values education. So when the guys all kept coming, she said, okay, it has to be Professor Ade-Ajayi's son. So I'm sorry that I started that way, but I just couldn't help myself. This is an absolutely amazing event. You asked why my dad chose Federal Government Girls College, Owerri, and not Queen's College, which was my first choice, is what I should actually share. When I get to heaven, I will ask him that question. But when I was younger, I was told that Lagos was a no-go, and my parents wanted me to go to boarding school because they felt that boarding school does give you skills that are extremely important in building you as a person, skills of independence, skills of responsibility. And so they wanted me to go to boarding school. So I applied to Queen's College, I got in. I applied to Federal Government Girls College, Kaduna, I got in, and my third choice was actually Federal Government Girls College, Owerri, and I also got into Federal Government Girls College, Owerri. And my parents thought it'd be a great idea to go to the Southeast, which is where I'm originally from. In Nigeria, having spent most of my life in Kano, in northern Nigeria. So that is the story, that they thought that would connect me a little bit more to my area of origin. But as you know, the Unity schools don't do that. They connect you to all of Nigeria. So I don't know where you want me to stop, but I could go on for the whole time that we have. So I'll just pause for you to ask another question. Yes.
I'm sure you could. And I'm sure everybody would want to know more. So maybe you're going to have to write a book about that school as well.
Your sister actually said so in our conversation about writing a few books. So I need to get some tips from her. It's a lot of hard work, that I know for sure.
Yeah, Federal Government Girls College isn't it actually in this edition, but I'm sure it will feature in subsequent ones. What was boarding house life like? I mean, this current generation have no idea what it was like to be in a boarding school in Nigeria. I won't say how many years ago. I'll leave you to do that if you wish.
Oh, no, you already said it. You said I went to boarding school from 1975 to 1980. And I'm always proud to, to show off how long ago it's been. And my older sisters and my older cousins and everyone reminds me that it's not as long as it's been for them. Boarding school was absolutely phenomenal. So those who know my parents know that my father is extremely strict. So just the opportunity to get away from home and take responsibility for my own life, and please don't tell him, was absolutely already 100% for me. But the Unity schools were very unique because at the time that I went to Federal Government Girls College Owerri, you had girls from every part of Nigeria. And it was just absolutely amazing to have us all be together. And some of those people are still friends of mine till today. Our principal was an English woman who had been the principal of Government Girls College Dala in Kano, and then left, I think, before just as the war was starting, and then returned when the Federal Government Girls College was founded in 1973. So I'm the third set of Federal Government Girls College. Absolutely phenomenal. One of the things, I have a few stories that are funny. One of them is that you know, we were, there were, the prince, I mean, I always say to people that the foundation of who I am is, comes from when I was very young. So it's, first of all, a relationship with God, second, my parents, but the third is the influence of being in primary school, in a good primary school and a good secondary school. And my, Miss Everett was an absolutely amazing woman. So I can't remember what it was. We were late for some, for getting to assembly. And she gave all of us in the school, we were punished. And our punishment was actually to write essays. And I remember as young girls, we're just giggling and saying, oh, she's the one who's going to have to do the work because she's going to have to read all of these essays. And by the way, we all got our essays marked and were given. So even the ways in which people were treated, and when I see some of the violence in Nigeria today, my heart breaks because there are ways in which people were brought up and they still turned out right. I have other stories of us only being allowed, we're only allowed three non-uniforms for the entire term. And the school enforced it. So there would be searches to make sure that you didn't have more than three for the entire year. And I was telling Oyinka a story around how girls thought that they could, they were smart, and so they were throwing their clothes over the fence and were asking someone to catch their own, and it was actually a teacher who was catching all of their things. So they got an extra punishment for actually throwing the extra clothes to a teacher. But I'll pause there as well. But phenomenal experience. I'm who I am because of, you know, as I said, God, my parents, those teachers who basically shaped my character. Of integrity, of work ethic, of courage, and, you know, standing alone if you're doing the right thing, of compassion, of service, of empathy.
Thank you very much, Arunma. I mean, don't go anywhere. I'd like to talk also to Aramide Abe. Now, Aramide, of course, is a slightly different generation from you. She is an old girl of Queen's College that you didn't go to, University of Nottingham, where she did computer science, and she also got an MBA from INSEAD, and not only INSEAD, from the Kellogg School of Management. Aramide, when did you enter QC? I think it was, when was it actually?
Hello, Mr. Akinkugbe. Thank you so much. I'm so honored to be on this call today. It's great that even having me on is making it some sort of intergenerational dialogue, so thank you. To your question, I started in September of 1993. I was actually, I think what happened was we get our results for the common entrance sometime later in the year, and I was eager to go to school because I come from a family that prioritizes academics as well. I see my great aunt, Ms. Lily here as well. And so for me, I was eager to start school, and I ended up going to another school prior to going to Queen's College. But it was on one day where my mother just took me to visit, because what had happened was I had settled into the other school and I wasn't so keen to leave as such, because I think I was class captain. I had made so many friends. And so she thought, okay, just come with me and just come and visit and let's see what happens. And I did. I went and I was astounded. It was massive when I saw these girls, and it just seemed like real life, you know? And I think from then I had made up my mind. I have to say that was one of the key decisions that I made, having a knowing that I definitely should be there, and I'm glad that I went there. So yes, I did start in September 1993, and you know, spent 6 years there up until 1999 when I graduated.
Well, I mean, amazing. And I'm very glad that they didn't have to actually tie you up hands and legs and take you to school, because I know that your mom and your sisters were all at QC, and you're all a family of eggheads. So you were quite happy in the end to have gone there.
Yes, I mean, my mom, God rest her soul, obviously Osinbajo Abe went to Queen's College. Her mom went to Queen's College as well. All of my aunties were there. So it just seemed like naturally I would go there. But I think my father was more, he was more supportive of what my choice would be. And so when I started the other school, he was happy for me to go on there. And even my mom, as much as she had wanted me to go to QC, she let me make my mind up myself. So just by taking me there, I mean, literally, I was like, yes, this is where I belong. And yes, I do not regret it one bit. It was an amazing experience for me. And because of that sense of, I suppose, solidarity, I've gone on to sit on, you know, the EXCO and, you know, for my year, and other committees that I'm a part of, because I do believe that things can change and improve, and we can not only develop the school, but like Miss Oteh said as well, the nation. So I'm quite passionate about that.
Well, I mean, quite honestly, one of the reasons why I think it's so exciting to hear you speak so well of Queen's College as recently as 1993 is simply because we're always talking about how bad things have gotten. Now, they can't be that bad if we can have with us an ambassador of the Sherry Blair Mentorship Program, who's also a mentor with Google Launchpad Africa and Microsoft Africa, and who's already mentoring hundreds of young entrepreneurs. So kudos to you. You're a great representative of Queen's College, and it's nice to have you with us this evening. Can I ask you both not to go away while I actually speak to one of our revered elders here this evening, Dr. Christopher Kolade, and I am pretty sure he's already marking me on my ability to interview, because he is a broadcaster of great repute from very many years back. And he's also, of course, has been our representatives of the Court of St. James, which is what they call Nigerian High Commissioners to Great Britain. Sir, Government College, the famous school, and you, of course, are part of a very famous set of schoolboys, although I know that you're in touch with all your former schoolmates that are still with us. You started in 1946. That's a whole lot longer than Aramide is 1993. And you were in Christ School at Ado-Ekiti before Government College. Why did you move?
Thank you for having me on this program, and I'm glad to be in possession of a copy of Oyinkan's book, because it is an eminently well-produced book. And if for nothing else, you're helping us to remember that we're people of high standards in this nation. Thank you very much. Yes, we went to Ibadan in 1946, and if that seems so long ago, well, I'll tell you what we do in Government College Ibadan. In order to show boys that went to school after us just how new they may be or how ancient we can be, the school used to give us numbers. We were numbered. So even though the school had been there since 1929 and we came in 1946, we were still in the 400 range. So my number was 473. So when I hear today that people are now in the 3,000s, and I say it cannot be the same world. But why did I leave Christ School? For a very simple reason. I had been to Emmanuel School for the first part of my primary school, and then went to Christ School for the second part of my primary school. But Christ School itself was still growing at the time and had not gone beyond what we would now call class 4, Form 4. So it was clear that I wasn't going to finish my secondary education at Christ School. And as was the habit in those days, parents looked for another place where their children could complete secondary education. So that's how long ago it was. And so I moved from Christ School to Government College in 1946 for that reason, that I couldn't finish secondary school at Christ School. And what was it like in school? Well, you have heard of the class of 46, of which I'm very proud to be a member. And you're correct. We have kept in touch with one another, even though 1946 is now 74 years ago, almost 75. I can tell you that we still have at least 25% of the class still kicking around somewhere. But, you know, we learned many things in school. And what I like to concentrate on is really the fact that having been brought up at home to know God and to try to be people of good behavior, Government College Ibadan was a continuation of that upbringing at home. And because of this, it was easy for some of us to acclimatize. But as one or two other people have said, because the entrance exam to Government College Ibadan was a countrywide examination, therefore we had boys from all over the country. And if we had known what the future of the country was going to be like, we would have emphasized this a lot more, because what it taught us was that it didn't matter where the boy came from. It was what he could do in the classroom, what he could do on the sports field that was important. We didn't care where he came from. We didn't care how rich or how poor their parents were. No, we recognized each other as individuals, and we competed against each other as individuals. It was much, much later that I began to find out that some of my classmates one of them came from so deep in the Delta that it took him 3 days to get home from school on holiday. So he had to be let away from school 3 days before, and he was allowed to come 3 days late next term because he had to go by canoe and then by lorry and all kinds of things. So that beautiful situation where you actually, as a very young teenage boy, you learned to relate to other teenage boys from any part of this country is something that has prepared us for what we have had to do in adult life. Of course, there was also the fact that because we're in houses and the houses competed against each other, the team spirit was built into each boy from the very beginning. And you felt you were part of a team. And the loyalty to a team, making your input, quality input, but also receiving the benefit from the team. These were things that were part of life. And those are the things that we remember in adult life. But please ask your next question, because I don't want to go on too long.
Oh, well, we could probably listen to you all evening, sir. But I really wanted to also point out to our audience that your class was actually pretty special. In fact, I think someone needs to investigate what exactly your teachers were doing that made you such bright students. Mr. Gobadia, Miwa Aware, Yinka Akinkugbe, Wale Shoyinka, of course, and then Victor Olunloyo. Quite a formidable group of students and all very bright. Was it that you gentlemen were studying from morning to night and had someone with a cane standing over you to make sure you absorbed everything they were teaching?
No, actually, I don't I mean, I myself have tried to understand it and explain it. Just one little correction. Victor Oluloyo was not actually in our class. He came after us, but he was one of those boys always pecking away at our heels and not letting us remember that we were senior boys when he was junior to us. But to come back to the class, I think the important thing in class was that from the very start, there was a spirit of very healthy competition in that class. And when I say healthy competition, in other words, if you found somebody who did better than you in a particular subject or particular aspect of life, what it made you do was not to envy him or try to bring him down. No, you made up your mind that next time around, he was not going to be ahead of you. And this was something that marked our class, I think. And I remember very well that when we finished school certificate, the concern that we all had, all 24 of us had, was whether we were going to end up in a grade lower than grade 1. This was the main concern. So that shows you that we did not think that grade 2 or grade 3 was something that we wanted anyone to associate our names with. So I think it all came from there.
So it had nothing to do, sir, with those very cold Harmattan mornings where presumably you probably had to have a very cold shower before school started. But did you know, I mean, were you aware when you were in school about the fact that the school had been used as a prisoner of war camp during just after the end of the Second World War? Was that something that came to your attention while you were at school?
Oh, yes. As a matter of fact, our chapel, for instance, was an old wooden building that had been passed on to us by the military. And there were little pathways in the school compound that were named, that had German names, Unter van Linden, for instance, where it was an indication that the people who built that road or built that path were not Nigerians or even British. They were prisoners of war or something like that. So yes, we knew very well that we had inherited an old military site, if you like. But that didn't make too much of a difference because where were we coming from ourselves? We just got hold of what we were offered and we made the best of it. So it was good. One thing about being in Government College Ibadan at that time was that the emphasis on discipline, not punishment, but orderliness. Discipline that you had to do things at the time you should do them. Even the siesta in the afternoon. Siesta was from 2:15 p.m. to 3 p.m. And when the bell went at 2:15 p.m., if you were caught still standing upright, you were in trouble. And at 3, when another bell went, if you didn't get up and go about your business, again, you were in trouble. The discipline was fantastic. And it helped many of us to bring orderliness into our own lives, even after school.
Wonderful. Yes, I remember siestas as well. But sir, you know that Government College was started in the same year, I think 1929, as Federal Government College Ughelli. And we have Mr. Sonny Iroche with us this evening. And I'm interested to see, because I know he's a Lagos boy, even though he went to school in Ughelli. Perhaps you can tell us a little bit about what the contrast was for him being in school in Ughelli and then also living in Lagos at that time.
I'm going to be fined by Mr. Iroche, first of all, because it was Umar here.
Oh, Umar here. Well, I apologize. I know that he will take that up with me at a later stage. My notes were wrong. But yeah, Mr. Iroche.
Thank you very much, Yinka. Thank you very much, Oyinkan. we share the same acronym, GCU, but Government College Umuahia is Government College Umuahia. Stands totally aside from any other one. In fact, Government College Umuahia started January 1929, while Government College Ibadan started May of 1929. I went to Government College Umuahia for almost the same reason as Arunma Oteh. Well, my father came to Lagos in 1943, where my mother was from Sierra Leone, so we're Lagosians. So I went to primary school here, Ladilac, and my father thought, hey, it's time you know your root. And of course, Government College Umuahia happened to be one of the greatest schools in Nigeria at the time, if not Africa. We had students from all over the East, from Cameroon, and some from Kenya. In fact, one elderly who was premier, later became premier of Southern Cameroon, went to Umuahia. So, well, we refer to ourselves as Umuahians. Government College Umuahia was the apogee of discipline. Similar to GCI, we had prisoners of war in the 40s who were camped at Umuahia. And I don't know what it is about 1946. It happened that in Government College Umuahia, we also had Chino Achebe, we had Christopher Kolade, class of 46 in Government College Umuahia. And we were taught to be anything we wanted to be. We were taught science, Latin, and arts. So the average Umuahian could study anything. We either study medicine, engineering, or literature. But the tradition really is to hone towards the sciences. That in Form 3, you either chose to study technical drawing or biology. If you studied technical drawing, you are heading towards engineering. If you studied biology in Form 3, you are heading towards medicine. And Latin was quite popular, and we used Latin for today, and every chapter in Latin for today started with Discipuli Pictura Spectate, in hac pictura viam appiam spectamus, and things like that. And we enjoyed it. Every chapter in Latin for today started with Discipuli Pictura Spectate. People look at the illustration. And I went into Government College Umuahia immediately after the Civil War, 1970. The war ended January, and we were to get into Umuahia in 68. But due to the Civil War, there was no schooling in the entire Eastern region for 3 years. And we were caught up in the Biafra War because we had to go home during the war. And our set, class of 1970, appeared to be very unique. We had to deal with the bombs that were left behind in Umudike, because Government College Umuahia was the headquarters of the research and production of the Biafran army. We had to be very careful when cutting grass, because that was our punishment. You had to be careful to make sure you don't hit any bomb. There are no bomb disposal units in Nigeria at that time. Well, to the best of our knowledge, none came. And then Government College Umuahia is unique in the sense that it's the only college that I know of, that I'm aware of, that students took school set in Form 4. You got into Umuahia, all of us young boys, any class, A, B, or C. They move over to Form 2. Then from Form 2, there's a general examination that the brightest 30 move on to 3A. From 3A, your syllabus changes. You're on the accelerated class. Then after Form 3A, you go to a class called Lower 5. From Lower 5, you took school set. Your other classmates continue with the normal stream. The disadvantage of, our advantage of that is, well, you finished your school set and came back for A levels, and your classmates, either two classmates, remained your juniors. But it also gave people the impetus to try to compete, to say, okay, fine, the fact that I'm not in Lower 5 doesn't mean I'm not going to make a grade 1. Our grade 2 really in Umuahia was not, it was a no-no, because everybody tried to do their best to get grade 1. And looking through Oyinkan's book, I was amazed that all of the foreign British teachers all went to Oxbridge, Oxford, Cambridge. And for those who studied biology, we had this book, Biology for Tropical Africa, written by Stone and Cousins. Both of them were principals in Government College Umuahia. And how can you be taught by Stone and Cousins and you don't have an A1 in biology? I mean, it's a no-no. We also had Mr. Carpenter, who wrote another book in biology. And boys were, we put ourselves under unnecessary pressure to boast that in Form 3, I've finished Nekon and Parker in physics. And I tell you a story, something very exciting. In Form 3, we were solving some problems, problems that had answers. And when the smartest boys in the class, they were twins, one had a grade 6, the other had a grade 7. We solved the problem and went to the answer. The boys said, no, this answer that the publisher put down is not correct. So the school said, okay, fine. They had to write to WAEC, and they found out really that the answer was wrong. So that's the story of Umuahia. We did academics as much as we did sports, extracurricular activity. We had debating society. We had the press corps. Why we write a lot? I write very well. It's because of the rich library that we had. And my class of 70 has taken upon ourselves to renovate and restore our library. About 6 years ago, the government of Abia State handed over Government College Umuahia back to the old boys on our request that, listen, fine, we know you don't have adequate funding for secondary schools. Give us back our school under a trust fund. The first principal was called Reverend Robert Fisher, and we now had a Fisher Trust Fund where we are taxing ourselves, collecting money to do various projects to sustain the school, renovate the school, and get principals and teachers of international standard. Thank you.
Well, yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Iroche. Thank God that you didn't come across any unexploded ordnance back in the day, because I think, like very many of our panelists, you're an excellent example of Umuahia. You of course studied zoology and went on to the Nigerian Defense Academy and then ended up teaching. But those of us who know you know that you're something of a politician, a proper politician, in the sense that you only want what's best for all Nigerians, and that you have a background in banking, as well as being very involved in the power sector these days in Nigeria. But then Umuahia wasn't just for scientists. I mean, in fact, the notable Umuahia literary giants were Chinua Achebe, as you mentioned, Chris Okigbo, Ken Saro-Wiwa, Elechi Amadi, and that's just a few of them. So once again, it's remarkable how well these colleges, these heritage schools produced members of the society that were giving back rather than taking away. If I can move on now, just to two important individuals. Important because, well, I share a little bit of history with them, having gone to the same school. But I'm actually referring to His Royal Highness Sanusi Lamido Sanusi, and I'd like to thank him very much for making time out for being with us, because this morning he was at Kaduna Economic and Investment Summit, amongst many of the things that he's called upon to do. And as usual, he produced an address there that will keep everyone thinking for a while. But today, I'd like to talk to him and his no, that's the wrong word, his classmates. They're both former students of King's College, Pastor Ituah Ighodalo. What is amazing about the two of you is the close relationship you've managed to forge since your school days and all through your life, so that today you're not just strangers who happen to have sat next to each other in school. You're people who are constantly corresponding and from different ends of the spectrum. You are a very renowned Islamic scholar. and a prince and an emir to boot. And Ituah, of course, having spent his career in accountancy and also now a man of the cloth, being a pastor. So what was it about King's College that inspired you, Your Royal Highness, if I start with you?
Thanks, Yinka, and hello, everyone. Maybe before I forget, I should say that one of the greatest miracles in the world is that Ituah Ighodalo ended up as a pastor. I never thought he was going to be a pastor in my life, but so that's an aside. You know, my own history with King's College, I'm coming to King's College like everyone else here, started with parents. And it's important for me to talk about how I got to KC, for me to explain what I took from KC and how, in fact, I got into KC. My father, having finished Kano Middle School and the School of Arabic Studies and the College of Administration in Zaria, being a prince, his grandfather was the emir, went back to work in the native authority system in Kano. And a few months into his job, an Englishman, Mr. Scott, who was his teacher at middle school, came to the palace for something and saw him with a file and said, Aminu, what are you doing here? And he said, I'm working. He said, no, you're not working. You're too smart, too intelligent to be here. You're here working for your grandfather, waiting for your grandfather to die and for your father to die so you can be an emir. Long and short of it, he encouraged him to move to the Northern Civil Service. And from there, joined the Foreign Service as a pioneer diplomat, went to Oxford and came back and then joined the Foreign, became an ambassador. My father determined, having seen the benefits of having left Ghana. So when I'm listening to Sonny and Arunma and their parents saying they should go back to Owerri, my father had the opposite experience of this British teacher telling him, get out of that environment, go into the world. And my father decided he wanted his son to get out of Ghana. So it started at the age of 8 when I was taken to a Catholic boarding school in Kaduna, St. Anne's. And he kept an interest. And I had no choice really, because by the time I was about to finish primary school in 1972, my father said to me, you're going to King's College. Apply to King's College. So I applied to King's College, and as usually happened, a number of federal government colleges that were just being opened in 1973, including Arunma School, Federal Government College Kano, Ilorin, they were all opened in 1973. I got my KC admission and went in. So the first thing is, I went into King's College, or I was asked to go into King's College so that I would know the world, and so that I would be away, I would basically free myself from a narrow provincial parochial environment. And that has been, for me, the driving value, the driving benefit of being in KC, the ability to see human beings as human beings, the ability to see that we are all made up of composite identities, and to be able to judge people by who they are, by the values that they represent, and to build these relationships that are long-lasting on that basis. So that explains my friendship with people like, I mean, Ituah is more than a friend, he's a brother. I tell people he's the only person in the world that I and my family would go out with, and him and his family, and travel on a family holiday with his late wife, sadly. May God have mercy on her. May she rest in peace. So that is how close we are. I don't have any other person in the world where I'll take my wife and his wife, I will just travel out to go and spend time together. And I don't feel as close to anyone in that sense. So what King's College gives you is that it makes you a true Nigerian, which is why when people talk about this country and the issues in this country and restructuring and division and ethnic nationalities, King's College boys, Queen's College girls, we laugh because we know that there is nothing like that. If you know Nigerians from all over the country, you know that Nigerians are Nigerians. You've got good people everywhere, you've got bad people everywhere. I mean, there is nothing special about being from any part of the country. And it's in a sense sad that the values that we had in KC, QC, and these schools do not seem to have been spread widely enough to other schools. And unfortunately, if there's one thing I would say is I do hope that we'll see a day when the political leadership in this country across the broad spectrum has a critical mass of people who came out of these heritage schools who understand that it's about a country, it's about a nation, it's about values, about merit, it's about what you bring to the table. And this is really what KC gave to me, and I gave to Ituah, I gave to all the people that went through that, a sense of independence, confidence, but also a belief in your essential humanity. And you need to look at every human being, white, black, northerner, southerner, Muslim, Christian, as that, a human being. He's either good or not good. He's either competent or not competent. He's either intelligent or not intelligent. He's either honest or dishonest. Those are the things that are far, far more important than the color of your skin and I think this is the most outstanding contribution to me of King's College, plus of course the sense that we're there to serve and we all live for something much bigger than ourselves. And you're going to, this world is transient, you're going to leave. Our elders, our seniors, we're interested in what legacy they left behind. I'm more interested in what people would say about me in 2100 and 2200, long after I'm gone, than what they say about me today. And I think this is something that all of us who went to these schools share. And I've met, Sonny is my friend. He's married to a wonderful QC girl. You see them and it's like you were born of the same parents, brought up in the same house. When I see Queen's College girls, we just click. This is the life, and I'm sure this is the same feeling that we all have. So I'm honored to be part of this conversation. I don't know if I've answered your question, but that's where I'd like to begin.
Your Royal Highness, it's always a pleasure listening to you, and it makes one a little emotional as well. I'm very sorry that I'm the host today and not one able to give my own opinions of what it was like to be in school. But Pastor Ituah Ighodalo, well, you've had a great endorsement from your friend, His Royal Highness. But I also recall that he was in Hyde Johnson's house, notorious, of course, for having naughty boys. You weren't in High J, were you? Which house were you in?
We were in the same room. May I say that Ituah was one who spoiled me? Well, he was in High J.
For those who don't know, I think that explains everything. If these two young men were both in High J at the same time and they've been friends for 45 years, then you know what High J must have been like. But Ituah, 45 years on, you were in school, just so that everybody knows, 1973 to 1977. What do you remember about your teachers in particular? I mean, were they special in any way?
Yeah, we had very, you were in King's College too, Yinka. I remember you playing hockey and things like that, sweating all over the place, here and there. And I thought you were such a hard senior then, but I'm glad that you're my brother now. And I don't know if Lamido remembers, the very first day he came to King's College, he came late. He came about a week or 2 weeks late. And I had already settled into King's College. And they brought him to me on the field to try and settle him down. So I pretended to be his senior. And I tried to bag him and bully him. I ended up helping him to make his bed and settle down. And from that day till today, like he said, we have really, really become brothers. We share a lot together in common and so on and so forth. And he left me a great legacy in that the very, very best words in Hausa, not to say the least, I learned from.
You are in a public forum, Ituah.
He taught me some wonderful words in Hausa. I'll never forget them. I still remember those words, but I won't say them. And he's afraid that if I say them, they might think that he's not quite. Anyway, So talking about our teachers, we had very, very good teachers in King's College. I remember our senior boarding house master at the time. His name was Mr. Odunewu, but we used to call him Oba. And he had a reputation for giving dirty slaps. Lovely soft hands, very big hands, but if Oba slapped you, you remember that slap for a season and a half to come. We also had Mr. Obot. I think he was teaching biology or chemistry. We had an Indian, I can't quite remember his name now, that taught physics or biology. And we had Mrs. Name, the mother of my good friend Albert, was also a French teacher at the time. But the guy that really took the biscuit was a guy called Mr. Agiobukema. He was our principal at the time, and we used to call him Karika, the great Karika. He was smart, he was very good looking. I believe he was either from Rivers State or Bayelsa State. And his son, Sobama, also was also in King's College at the time. And Karika gave us discipline, he gave us values. All you needed to do was to hear his feet coming down the corridor, and everybody sat up. We had very, very memorable, what you may call, I don't know, I can't remember the name now, but those things you had when you started school, school assembly, where Karika will speak in very, very distinguished English language and inspire us. You know, the first thing they told you when you got to King's College was that you're a King's man. And in King's College, we don't fail. We're cultured people, we're people of background, and every other schoolboy is an schoolboy. And so you had this confidence inspired in you. You were made to feel special. You felt special. You walked around with your head up high and determined to do things. You were going out on exit. Somebody would inspect you to make sure that your uniform was crisp, your uniform was clean, and you were then allowed to go out and make sure that you distinguish yourself as a King's College boy. I remember the first outing to Queen's College that I was going, and I went to put on my sharp shorts and my nice crisp shirt. And as I was leaving, I think it was Ibirogba or somebody who called me and said, hey, come here, where are you going? I said, I'm going to Queen's College Literary Day, junior year. Says, and you are going in a pair of shorts? What kind of King's College boy are you? Go and wear a pair of trousers. Don't you know that you might meet a nice lady there? And so on and so forth. So this was the King's College that we found ourselves in. I don't know if you remember, Yinka, those days when we used to play football and we'll say, we can play first class soccer. This is the way we play it. And King's College, oh yeah, katabu. You know, when I go to King's College now and I start talking to people and say, King's College, oh yeah, they don't answer me. Then I know that they didn't quite go to the King's College that we went.
But a totally different generation.
Well, I guess. Even till today, I remember I go to King's College with a sense of nostalgia. I can almost see myself there in Form 1, Form 2, and so on and so forth. And of course, I'm sure, Yinka, you took Brian when you came into the boarding school when we did our initiation. Do you remember that? Lamido, you remember Brian initiation? I'm sure you took Brian. And my good friend, His Royal Highness, was very, very troublesome as a Form 1, Form 2 guy. Quiet, smallish, very tiny, but extremely, he will cause trouble, and then some of us will have to go and try and defend him and make sure that they don't deal with it. But you can never forget the values that you were taught in those schools. You can never forget. King's College can never leave you. Anywhere I see any of my mates, it's always a sense of joy, a sense of confidence, a sense of reassurance, a sense of understanding. I mean, the NSA was with us on Saturday at our lecture, and he was so excited. It was like a little boy back in the corridor.
111 years, I think it was. Yeah,
111 years lecture. It was a beautiful event last Saturday, and we all came back together and had a really wonderful time. And that's the benefit of these heritage schools. And what we're trying to do is to make sure that we preserve that heritage, we preserve the standards. And I'll be talking to Sonny after this, because I'm glad to know that they've developed a trust to take over Umuahia. And we're trying to develop a similar kind of trust to take over King's College and bring back the traditions that we had in them days.
Yeah. Just a little note for you, Alabo Agebu Kema was my classmate in school, and it didn't affect him being in school, at least I don't think so. And interestingly enough, of the teachers that were in your generation and mine, 3 of them went on to be principals of Queen's College, which is just an interesting note. Mrs. Name, Ms. Marino, and at least 1 other. So there was a lot of cross-fertilization between the schools, even in those days. Well, you didn't seem to have been very good at football, but did the games make much of an impact on you? I mean, the importance of sports? Pastor Ituah.
I was good at football, very, very good. I played for the junior team. I was also quite good at hockey. I played for the junior team in hockey. I also swam. We swam together. You were in the swimming team with Kole Aluko, if you remember. That's when I caught pneumonia, and I had to go home to Ibadan for a month. And that's when I stopped swimming really actively. But I played football, I played lawn tennis, and of course, if you're a High Johnston's boy, you played squash. We were very good in squash. But I had a young fellow called Muiwa Idowu, an Ibadan boy also. He beat me all the time in squash. I still cannot forget that. But I played football. I played decent football. And when I got to ISI, I played football also for ISI for my A-levels. And I played hockey. I remember playing Queen's College senior team in hockey. There was a lady there called Mariam Uwais now, smallish girl. She played fantastic hockey from Queen's College in them days. Yeah, the sports were very, very good. I mean, we enjoyed ourselves thoroughly. And like His Royal Highness said, one thing about King's College, we didn't know where anybody came from. We didn't care what your parents were, what they owned, and how wealthy or not they were. We're just young men trying to make a difference and trying to get ahead. You were either a sportsman or very good in academics. And if you were good in academics and not good in sports, we called you a swot. You're just a swot. But if you are good in most things, we called you an all-rounder. I was inspired to go to King's College right from the time I could think, because what I was told was that was the best school in Nigeria, and it was a school you wanted to go to. But then directly, my godmother's son, Dele Oredugba, and Bankole Aluko, who were my seniors at Maryhill in Ibadan, also went to King's College, and they inspired me to follow in their steps to go to King's College. And of course, Jide Johnson, who is a High Court judge in Lagos now. And those were the sorts of people one looked up to and who gave a lot of inspiration.
I'm sure you looked up to your elder brother as well, who was also in King's College. But just a quick word about siblings. Your Royal Highness, did you have any siblings that ended up in King's College, or did you find that in your family you were on your own? I wonder if His Royal Highness, he might be muted, but I could see him a second ago. Okay, perhaps Ituah, you can answer that question. Do you know if His Royal Highness had any siblings in school?
Okay, I think the host has allowed me to unmute myself now.
Yes.
No, I didn't have a sibling. I had a cousin, Kabir Abbas, who we remember. He joined us he was with us in Form 1. We left him after that. Well, by the way, Ituah and myself spent only 6 months in Form 1. Because we got in January 1973, and that was the year that the school calendar changed. So I think we were fagged for fewer months than any other King's College boy. So I had a cousin, Kabir Abbas. He was called Abbas K. Unfortunately, after Form 1, he couldn't make it straight to Form 2, so he had to continue and complete with the set after us. That was a set of Bukola Saraki and Sanusi Dagash. But no, there are very few members of my family who went to King's College. And I suppose being a competitive prince who wanted to be an AME, I didn't want many of them to be there because you know, to be outstanding.
And honestly, let me leak a secret. When we were all trying to choose careers, and we asked Lamido Sanusi what he wanted to be, he says he was going to be the Emir of Kano, period. And I was imagining myself thinking, why would anyone want to be Emir of Kano? I thought it was like the Oluoke of Okego, where my mother came from. And I didn't know that it was such a distinguished position to be Emir of Kano. But then General Mohammed's son, your cousin, Lamido, he was your cousin in King's College. I think you had a few cousins there. And also,
that's true, Zachary, the late Zachary. Yes, Zachary was there.
Yeah, right. Because I remember he was a guardian when we were in King's College. You know, yeah, I remember that. And
one thing comes out from your experiences at school, I mean, and that I think has been what everyone has said about Unity schools, and that is that people came from all over the country, from different stations, as we like to say in life, but by the time they left, they were all welded together as brothers and sisters, and had that relationship that kept them all through their lives, and is keeping them through their lives. That was something that was pretty unusual about the Unity schools that perhaps isn't replicated in other countries in quite the same way. But if I leave you gentlemen for just a few minutes while we go to our last pair of speakers, I'm hoping that Mrs. Folasade Adefisayo is now with us. Shade, are you there? Well,
Yes, Yinka, I'm there.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, because she is an extremely busy lady now. COVID-19 has meant that the program for schools in Lagos is a little disrupted, and she is in charge of making sure that those students can get back to school. Shade comes from a very big family.
Two numbers.
Yeah. Shade Adefisayo, I think maybe she's got a few digital glitches there. Comes from a school, a family of teachers, in the sense that her mother was a teacher, a student, of course, of Queen's College. But she herself, Shade, went to Queen's School, and in her family followed her mother's tradition and footsteps all the way through to being a headmistress, chairman of Corona Council, I believe, and has ended up late in her career to be Commissioner for Education in Lagos State. But you went to Queen's School in Ibadan, on the, well, not so far away from Government College. What was it like being in Queen's School, Shade? And why didn't you go to your mother's Queen's College in those days? I'm hoping someone unmutes Shade Adefisayo.
Okay.
There we go.
Have they unmuted me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. I said, well, Queen's School, I don't know why I went to Queen's School actually. I think we were moving to Ibadan. So we were living in Lagos, but on the verge of moving to Ibadan. So I think, I guess that's why. I really can't remember. But then I came for the interview. It was a 4-day period, and I had a wonderful time, you know, with staying in the boarding house. I thought that was what boarding house was like, you know, a bit like Mallory Towers, Twins at St. Clair's, and in Brighton that I had read. So I was quite excited and thought that was what boarding house was like. And of course, the interview, they were lax, they were easy with us, we had fun. So I was so excited. This is home. I'm just going to be like the Twins at St. Clair's.
Well, how did that end up? If you, for the next 5 years, was it quite the same?
It wasn't quite like that, but initially I was homesick. I was very homesick. Of course, I had never left home before, and here I was in Ibadan, my parents, my brothers and sisters in Lagos. So I think I went through a rather trying period, but I settled down and grew to enjoy it. First of all, I found it easy to learn. I'm lucky in that respect, in that I can learn most subjects and I would probably do fairly well. So school was fun. We were taught by very good teachers who I still can't forget till today. And after school, there were lots of activities because it wasn't just going to school to pass exams. It was to have a total kind of education. So we were involved in a lot of after-school activities. And of course, the discipline was there. And we were expected to be disciplined, well-brought-up girls. But most importantly, I think now that I look back, is that they didn't try to, force us into a particular mold, kind of. Let me put it that way. They allowed us to be whatever we wanted to be. So, in those days, women were either secretaries, nurses, or teachers. Nothing wrong with these three professions. But if you wanted to go outside those three professions, sure, you were good to go. So in my class of 60 or so, we have people across every profession you can think. We have about 20 doctors. We have so many professors and so on. So I think we were taught to be open-minded, flexible, willing to take a risk and just be who we wanted to be.
Well, as a teacher of teachers and educational consultant, you have a unique perspective on what education is like in Nigeria, from your experience, from your mother's background as a teacher and a headmistress. How do you find it today? These schools, are they living up to their promise? I mean, just a couple of words about that.
No, not anymore. Unfortunately, it's worrisome. I think I sent my daughter to Queen's College, actually, my older daughter, and no regrets whatsoever. Though there were many in her class, so many, I can't say. I think about 100 and something in one class. So the whole set was about 900. So, but still, she got a good enough education. She did well in school. She was quite an accomplished young lady. So I think the culture, the traditions were still passed even to her generation. So I think in some instances, they've tried to retain some of the because there was a certain thing about the culture, the language, the way you sat even, and when you finished eating, the way you put your cutlery together, the way you tucked in your blouse, the way you walked erect. These are all things that we were taught. The way you behaved, how you just told the truth, how you related to people who are senior to you, junior to you, and lack of bullying. And so these are all things that we were taught in school. But I'm not, nowadays, and I can't blame schools again, only just schools. I think it's a huge environmental problem. The schools cannot be different from their context. And contextually, we've lost a lot of values in Nigeria. And we've lost a lot of things like belief in tradition. You are old school. If you believe in girls walking upright, erect, behaving well, speaking right, and so on, you are old school. And so and of course, there's no way the school can differ from where it is. So I think for me, that makes me quite sad. Actually.
When you were in school, I mean, I've always loved this story that one of your teachers, I think actually the principal of your school, got married to the principal of government college. Were you aware of that when you were in school?
Walked by, how?
No, sorry, were you aware that happened when you were in school? I'm not sure if it happened when you were in school.
Not sure on that the principal of Queen's School walked by the principal of...
No, Miss Groves of
no, that was St. Anne's.
St. Anne's. Oh, yes. Okay.
That was St. Anne's. Oh, the principal of St. Anne's married the principal of GCI. Okay. Ultimately. Miss Groves, yes.
That is a nice segue, because that's really a question for Funsho Adegbola, who was at St. Anne's. Funsho, I hope you're online. Funsho was, she's like Mrs. Adefisayo, is a teacher, well, the owner of a school, the Vale College, a very well-regarded secondary school in Ibadan. And of course, is the daughter of the former Attorney General, the late Bola Ige, who was a very famous orator in his day and sign of the Ibadan Grammar School, and had a famous nickname, Kekero of Estauke, which is where they came from. But for sure, so
yes.
that story, were you aware of it when you were in school?
Yes, I'm very well aware of it. I was even a bridesmaid at the wedding of Miss Groves to Derek Bullock, because Miss Groves had taught my mom when my mom was in CMS Girls School, Lagos. And then I went to St. Anne's in 1970. So it was natural for me to go to St. Anne's because my mother had gone to St. Anne's. My mother's sisters had gone to St. Anne's. So St. Anne's was a natural for me. And I had choice to go to Queen's School or St. Teresa's or St. Louis, or St. Anne's, but I chose St. Anne's. I had a wonderful time in St. Anne's. Miss Groves, later Mrs. Bullock, was our principal in St. Anne's at the time. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Yeah.
Can you? Okay. Was our principal at St. Anne's at the time, and she taught us a lot of things, public speaking, elocution. We had to know how to pronounce our H's. I acted in school plays. First and foremost, when we were younger, we pretended to be boys. And then when Miss Groves and Bullock got together, then GCI boys acted with St. Anne's girls. So we showed the Queen's School girls that we were better than them, and that our principal could get the principal of GCI, who was next door to them, and didn't pick their own principal. And but it was nice. I have great memories of St. Anne's. I was 9 years old when I started, so I was very, very young for my class. I was the youngest in my class, and in a way, I tell people I had head knowledge, but I didn't have wisdom. A lot of the things that I do in my own school now are things that I was taught in St. Anne's. And so St. Anne's prepared me. I loved my time in St. Anne's. From St. Anne's, I went to boarding school in England, and it was just a natural transition for me. I didn't have to have things transcribed. I'd read the complete work of Shakespeare by the time I left St. Anne's. We had arts festival. We would do things, public speaking, debates, writing of poetry, handwriting. You know, we had flower gardens for each house, and we had scores on things like that, and a lot on deportment. And so for me, you know, it was just nice. I had very, very good memories of St. Anne's. And so now I left St. Anne's in 1975, and I started the Vale College in 1994. And a lot of St. Anne's girls also have schools, and you can see that St. Anne's prepared us for what we're doing now. And for me, education has been very special to my family. My dad went to Ibadan Grammar School. My great-grandfather was Papa Okeowo, who donated the first building to Ibadan Grammar School. My father was very passionate about Ibadan Grammar School. My mom went to Ibadan Grammar School for a few terms, but she did better in St. Anne's. And I'm proud to say that my mom was the first female lawyer from Ibadan. And St. Anne's produced a lot of first female vice chancellor, first female history professor, Professor Aware, Professor Oluri, Professor Oshutokunze would all come back to St. Anne's and mentor and talk to St. Anne's girls. I think that's so fantastic. St. Anne's was a really good background for me. I have no regrets. I'm so happy that I went there. And Ms. Groves was a friend of the family. When I had my son in 1990, I went to see her in Cornwall. And, you know, it was so nice. You know, 3 generations, she had taught my mom, she taught me, and now she saw me have my son. So I thought that's very, very special. So
it certainly is. And I think we must thank her for inspiring you so much. Those schools in those days, a lot of them had English teachers.
Yes.
I'm not sure that very many schools today, at least not in the unity schools, have foreign teachers. but they did make a impression on their students. What, if anything, is a central, what would you say was a core thing that was part of St. Anne's that you've been able to bring to the Vale, apart from academic achievement? Because we need to congratulate you. All your students passed out with flying colors, and I think this year, every student had an A.
Yes, everybody had an A stars. I think St. Anne's sort of gave
Unfortunately, I think the sound has disappeared from Mrs. Adegbola, and that is one of the hazards you have with online things. So while it might be restored, but if we wait for a while to see whether her connection gets any better, we can maybe speak to Mrs. Titi Akinsanya if she's online. I hope she is. She is the president of the Holy Child College All Girls Association and is herself.
Titi Akinsanya.
Titi Akinsanya. Sorry, okay. I know why. Yes. Yeah. Mrs. Akinsanya. Well, you know I know you very well, so forgive that little slip. Holy Child College. You know, that was your old school, and when you look at it today, it's almost as if the school hasn't changed in all those years. It's neat, it's tidy, and the girls seem to be very well organized. How have you managed to do that?
Well, Yinka, thank you very much. And first, let me say a big thank you to Oyinkan for inviting me. She and I had some wholesome conversations 2 weeks ago. Ituah, thanks for the correction. I don't know why the Adiaga has lasted more than the Akinsanya.
Well, your brother made sure we couldn't forget him in school.
We'll talk about the KC influence on me later. Yes, Holy Child College. I'm happy to hear what you said earlier, because anyone stepping into the school will appreciate its the holiness within the school once you step in. The green grass, the luscious fields, the buildings speak and span. And in those days for me, the Reverend Sisters, oh dear, behold, I mean, they were just the embodiment of holiness. And so for me, Holy Child was just by chance, in the sense that I had received admissions to Queen's School, Ibadan, and St. Anne's, Ibadan, as well as Reagan Memorial School in Lagos. But my aunt, Mrs. Folasade Adefisayo, was a geography teacher and Bible study teacher in Holy Child College. She herself had attended Holy Child College. I believe she was the third or fourth set. And so somehow she managed to convince my dad that no, instead of leaving Lagos to go to school in Ibadan, I should school in Lagos. And so there was a family coup, more or less. And I remember the day I was to come to Holy Child to sit for my exam, which was out of the normal schedule of schools. My father brought me, and I remember stepping into the compound, and I just saw, it was like, whoa, 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 is this a school in Lagos, Nigeria? Forget the Obalende side, I mean, but it was like, is this a school in Lagos, Ikoyi? And as we were walking towards the principal's school, Angelus was taking place, where a bell was rang and everyone stood still and made the sign of the cross, you know, and said a prayer, and it was like, whoa. And my father was like, oh, so you like this place? I said, no, Dad, I just said, whoa, you know. And I saw the uniform and all that, and after I did my entrance test, I went to the chapel. I couldn't help but go to the chapel because I heard some people singing, and I come from a musical family. And it was like, again, the chapel just blew my mind, and I couldn't help but be curious, because after the chapel, there lies what we used to call the fairyland, which was the playground. Again, it was luscious. It was so pristine. It was neat. It was clean. It was like, how can people play here, you know, and all that. And I remember coming back to my dad to say, I think this is the school I'd like to be. And then he said, but I thought you wanted to be a boarder. So again, we spoke to somebody who took us round upstairs to the boarding house. And unlike when I went to Queen's School, Ibadan, and St. Anne's, no, it was St. Anne's I went to then, just for my entrance exams. I didn't see bunkers, double-deckers in Holy Child boarding house. I just saw single beds, and I thought, whoa, 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 this is the life. So that was how I ended up in Holy Child College from Form 1 to 5.
Yeah, were you Catholic, by the way? That's just another interesting thing. That so many people went to schools that were not necessarily of their faith. And I just wondered, in your case, was that the case? Were you Catholic when you went?
Well, that's another interesting thing. No, I wasn't Catholic. I was brought up as a Baptist. And that was why I guess I thought the next school to go to would be Reagan Memorial Baptist Girls School, right? But no, I was brought up a Baptist. And the fact that Holy Child College admits students from different religions. And when I was in school, we had quite a number of Muslims in school. We had Hindu students, because we had quite a number of foreign students from Asia, you know, in the college. And I still recollect, even now, quite a number of my classmates who were Muslims. But guess what? You had to be in assembly together. You had to attend chapel together. So regardless of religion, Holy Child admits anyone and everyone. But such was the discipline in the school that you had to fall in line with the religious dictates of the Reverend Sisters. That is, attend chapel when it was necessary. And it was for everybody.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Mrs. Akinsanya. I almost made the same mistake again. It's been wonderful to have so many people online.
But Yinka, I think I should tell you the KC bit of my life.
Please do.
Because I went to Holy Child from Form 1 to 5, and then went to Queen's College for A levels. About 12 of us were admitted from Holy Child College into Queen's College. And today, I'm married to a King's College old boy. My brother went to King's College. I guess he was your classmate. And I think it was just that the Gregorians were rather slow, you know. I came in contact with quite a number of them because we took part in a lot of dramatic art, the school plays, you know, Opujaja, Ipitombi, you know, and I sang in the choir with quite a number of them. But I must say, the boys from St. Gregory's, they were not as smooth as the ones in King's College. Hence, I'm married to one.
Well, you know, if we actually went through who married who, we'd find that there's a lot of cross-fertilizations from all these wonderful schools.
Indeed.
Well, I know we could talk all evening, and we wanted this to be just the first of many sessions that we have where we're not so much trying to redefine education in Nigeria, but simply reminding everyone of the history and heritage of Nigerian schools. And maybe by doing that, we begin to inspire other people to take a deep interest in preserving the standards and the ways of all those schools. A good number of those who are our panelists, quite coincidentally, are still involved in education. A good number of them are teaching, and I think Dr. Christopher Kolade, sir. I mean, not only is he probably still teaching at Lagos, one of Lagos business schools, he's also has a foundation that supports the girl child and education. His Royal Highness, I know, is very, very vocal about the girl child and education for girls and children, and so on and so forth. So we all collectively have a deep interest in education, and we all seem to have enjoyed our schools. Even those of us that were caned in school seem to have found that it didn't do us any harm in the long run. Thank you all for having been here. The book, before I forget, for those who haven't yet seen it, is remarkably good value. It's 12,000 Naira. Don't ask me how anyone could have produced a book like this for only 12,000 Naira. But what I can tell you is that you had better get a copy quickly, because there won't be very many left for very long. It's available in all the usual places. I have a list of them here. I think booksellers, both in Ibadan and in Lagos, Glendora, and it's certainly available on Amazon UK. And I know Amazon UK will deliver to Nigeria if you want. Yeah, Lagos is the booksellers near Waye, Kenyaba, and also 44 Quarry Road, opposite Anglican High School Junction in Abeokuta. And Abuja, there's a booksellers too on City Plaza ground floor. It's available in Latana, Glendora, Quintessence, and obviously a great many other outlets. This evening, there are a lot of the older generation that are present that haven't had a speaking role. And I know a lot of them are itching to say a word or two, because this is something that interests all of us. But if you would allow me to just single out Chief Mrs. Folake Shulanke to say a word or two, tell us a bit about her school experience before we go this evening. Chief Folake Shulanke, SAN.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for calling on me without notice. I went to Methodist Girls High School, Lagos, the best in Nigeria, 1945 to 1949. The statements made by many of the contributors certainly go along with my own experience also at Methodist Girls High School, Lagos. The most important thing was discipline. And we have the mottos, in love, serve one another. So we were brought up with Christian principles. And it was one of the happiest periods of my life that I went to Methodist Girls High School, Lagos. We also had expatriate headmistress. And it was good that our parents were able to nurture us to go there. And listening to the statements by everyone, it's been a joy for me to be here. And I want to congratulate again Oyinkan for a very remarkable book. When I got mine, I was absolutely astonished. And I told again, Chief Olu Akinkugbe, that this is for history, for a museum. What I would like to emphasize is that the experience today has manifested the very high standard of education that we had in those days, compared with what we have now, which is a decay which has afflicted our educational system. I pray that this book will be purchased by educational institutions, by the ministries. Let them see what we had by way of education, and now what we have through the decay in what is going on in Nigeria. I also had my own first profession, career in England. I taught Latin and mathematics, and I was very happy to hear the Uhelian gentleman talk about the Scipuli. So we had very rounded education, and it is important for us. Now, when I go out and see children in shabby uniforms and the speech is poor, everything, there's decay. So we must use this book as the beginning to refocus Nigeria on education and to go back to the high standard which we had. And we thank God for what Oyinkan has done. She's done a remarkable job. And I also congratulate her husband for the support, and of course, the parents for the support. Thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to speak. I wish you a very good evening. Thank you.
Thank you. And you see, that is what a good education gives you. The ability to be called upon without any notice, but to deliver a speech that seems as if it was written specially for the occasion. Thank you very much, Auntie Chief Falake Shulanke. One of the great inspirations for Oyinkan was our late uncle, Professor Ladipo Akinkugbe. And he was the epitome of those of education, a classmate of Dr. Christopher Kolade. So one of the special group of boys in those days in government college. But he lived his life really, not just for medicine, but for education. And he was always very interested in telling those around him about what a difference school had made to him from his very earliest days and all through his career. We have a short video of him speaking to us. I'd like them to run it now so you can all see it.
It's been what I could call an epidemic of decadence in the entire secondary school system in this Nigeria. And GCI has been a victim, and the leadership in terms of whether the region or the state has often neglected their own responsibility. There are governments that were totally uninterested in the fortunes of secondary schools, including government colleges. Time was when government college entrance exam, 2,000 people, children, and you're going to choose 24. And out of those 24, we would have people from the Midwest, from what is now Middle Belt and all that. In Mount Clara, there were at least half a dozen from Benin and area. But the governor came and said, no, you must limit the recruitment to Oduona, okay, from government college, Akbata. That
would be from that
right. You wasn't straight. So you get to government college. There are no people from the Midwest or any of them. Now that is a tragedy. Okay. What you say? I would never have met people like Obadiah, Ibe, and any of those people.
That's true.
So really, as I say, it's a general. You say I've been a victim of a general malaise. But I'm a great optimist. I don't just sit in one place and bemoan the fate of government.
All right.
Well, sometimes the digital side of things makes it a bit of a challenge, but I think we heard enough to see what Prof was saying about the importance of what government that government does have a great effect on schools, and they have to be very careful what they do so as not to destroy the work of those of a previous generation and instead be able to build on that work. I mean, those who have been with us this evening, we once again like to thank you very much, Arunma Oteh, Aramide Abe, Dr. Christopher Kolade, sir, Mr. Sonny Iroche, His Royal Highness Sanusi Lamido Sanusi, Pastor Ituah Ighodalo, Folasade Adefisayo, Mrs. Funsho Adegbola, and of course, Mrs. Titi Akinsanya. Because they all represent the best that Nigeria produced from those schools and should therefore be an inspiration to all those who are coming behind. All hope is not lost. It's very gloomy in some cases, but what the government schools have lost, a lot of the private schools have gained. And that is perhaps a very good note on which to end. A final word from Dr. Oyinkan Ade-Ajayi to round off the evening.
Thank you very much, Yinka. For those who are here right at the beginning, you would have heard Kaline sing the words very movingly. The labor of our heroes past shall never be in vain. Singing about a peaceful and front-facing nation. This book is a labor of love. It's a result of a labor of love. And I have no bias whatsoever when I salute the author for her focus, commitment, integrity, and pursuit of excellence. We've heard from all of the panelists. Arunma Oteh has spoken about hard work and integrity. Aramide about the great traditions of Queen's College. Dr. Christopher Kolade about healthy competition and discipline rather than punishment. Mr. Iroche has talked about the alumni being proactive and taking back the school and what they can do with it with seriously ambitious plans. His Royal Highness has taken a long view of history, more interested in what people will say in 100 years than what they will say now. Ituah Ighodalo has talked about the camaraderie and solidarity at King's College Hospital. Funsho Adegbola reminded us about the social side of schooling, and also our Commissioner of Education, the importance of pulling together to make a difference. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you particularly again to our parents, Chief and Mrs. Akinkugbe and Chief Mrs. Ade-Ajayi. I'd like to thank our children who persevered while Oyinkan did this work, Tosin, Obafemi, and Adeolu, and who sometimes quoted her own words back to her when she was flagging, reminding her never, ever, ever to give up. I'd like to end by showing you my green passport. I carry it with me wherever I go, and I am persuaded that one day people will fast and pray and rejoice when they get a green passport. We have a nation to build, and this is a reminder of the values that will help us to build the nation. Having said all of those words, make sure that you go out and find the book. Thank you for joining us. Stay in this season. Right.
We will keep the meeting open for another 5 minutes with all microphones unmuted. If anybody can hear each other over the ensuing commotion, please do. But thank you so much. It's been very, very nice being part of this. And I wish you all a very pleasant evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Yinka.
Thank you very much.
Brilliant.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Fantastic.
Well done.
Well done.
Yes.
Thank
you. That was fantastic.
Thank you.
Fantastic evening.
Thank you.
That was fantastic.
Well done.
Well done, everyone.
We
Well
enjoyed.
Excellent.
Bye.
Congratulations.
Brilliant.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Bye, everybody.
Congratulations.
God bless.
Congratulations.